I'ma keep winning, winning. I'ma keep winning, winning. Ooh. I'ma keep winning, winning. You can try to save yourself, but you only go.
What's going on, guys? Jake here, back with another video, and it's Combine Week. So this video, I decided I'm going to make it on the 5 prospects I think will be most affected by the NFL Combine that's coming up this week, starting Thursday all the way up, taking over the entire weekend. But before we get into it, please make sure to like the video, comment down below anything you agreed or disagree with that I end up talking about in this video, and make sure to subscribe to the channel for future NFL content, whether it's the NFL Combine, free agency, NFL draft stuff. I'm going to be putting out tons of videos, so make sure to subscribe to be able to follow along with that. So, with the combine being this week, there's a ton of players that are going to be depending on this combine to either raise their stock, or with that, it could affect them negatively, and they could end up falling down a couple draft boards based on team interviews, the drills on the field, the 40-yard dash, all that stuff. So it's a lot more than just running the drills. It also has to do with team interviews, doctors looking at certain players, what's that have an injury history, how they feel about them, and getting to know these players just from a standpoint of personality and how they see the game. So it's a lot more than just what we see on TV with the 40-yard dash and all that. They do a rigorous type of interview with all these players at each teams where they meet with them. They go through extensive doctors work. One of the days that they're there, it's legit just all team meetings, and it's all team meetings with certain players, and it's all just doctors just checking them up and just making sure that all their injuries and how they're going to see them. So it's really going to affect these players, and how they're going to impact their stock, if they're going to rise up the board or fall down. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into it. The first guy I really see that it's going to affect their draft stock a lot is Michael Williams. Now, the reason he is, he's an athletic freak. He's 6'5", 265, and he's mainly seen as almost like that Trayvon Walker build from a couple of years ago that went #1 overall to the Jaguars, because he has all the tools and him being an athletic freak and all that, but he didn't really show much production at Georgia. And the combine's pretty much built for a guy like this, a guy that has that ability, that has that freakishly long arms, and he's going to test out his measurables with this height, weight, length, all that. It's going to be off the charts and be one of the best at the combine. And then where he does on-field drills and the 40-yard dash, he's going to be up there with most of the guys. And when they see him, he's just going to pop. And these on-field guys, whenever he's doing drills, he's one of these drill warriors that are just going to be the best out of any of them. And it's really going to look like that's going to raise his stock if he comes out and does well in these. And people are just going to see the potential that he has, even though they didn't necessarily have the production on tape that a lot of people but they see the potential that he has to be able to take over a lot of these games. He has all the traits in the world to be able to kill the combine if he can go in and back it up with team meetings and everything checks out medically. He's sitting right now. He could go anywhere from inside the top 10 to the early 20s and the late teens area in the first round. So he's anywhere in there. It just depends on what team sees him and how they see him with his athletic ability to be able to produce. With this being a very loaded edge class, that could hurt him a little bit, but with how he's built and just his body length and just, his athletic ability, he's one of those guys that's going to go in the combine and he's going to rise up some boards, and people are really going to turn their heads and have some shockness to him because he's going to be such an athletic freak that we've seen in the past with certain players that have risen up the boards because of their athletic ability. The #1 example that everybody compares him to, like I said earlier, was Trayvon Walker. Trayvon Walker was seen as kind of like a mid first round pick. And in that class, the Jaguars, even though Trent Baalke was the GM, so he really fell in love with guys like Michael Williams that had all the freakish, like, athletic ability. Trayvon Walker was able to go out to the combine, blow it up, and he in his pro day was able to do the same thing, and he was able to show off his measurables, and he slowly started rising up boards. And then around early April, yeah, it was like Trayvon Walker could end up being the #1 overall pick, and everybody was shocked by, like, are they really gonna do this? And they end up doing the same thing. This could happen with Michael Williams. Now he's not gonna go #1 overall. I will say that he's not going to go number one overall, but he could rise up into that top 10 area and go somewhere like the Panthers, like the Jets, somebody like that, just because of that upside potential that he does have. And the combine's a perfect place if he's going to raise his draft stock, then that is the time and place to be able to do it to show off those skills. Moving on to number two on my board is Benjamin Morrison. Last year, this guy was seen as a top 10 pick in the draft. And he was a guy that's been starting at Notre Dame for 3 years, and he was kind of seen as a very consistent All-American type player. He has an NFL pedigree. His family members have been in the NFL. So he comes from an NFL family. He has that ball knowledge and an instincts at a corner position. But part of the reason that he really has been kind of falling down boards and people haven't questioned whether he's a first round talent or not since he was the top 10 pick a year ago that everybody's seen him as is mostly his injury concerns. And this is that aspect that we really don't think about at the combine. We really just see the on-field stuff, but most of it is teams. This is the first time that they're able to get their hands on these players to be able to see their medical reports and have their team doctors look at them to be able to get the medicals that they of the guys that they trust that are employed by their team. And Benjamin Morrison's going to have a huge impact on that with his injuries because with that, he's had two major injuries in his career to his hip in the same spot. He had one back in high school, and he had a major hip injury this year that cost him to miss most of the season. And with him sitting out, he has all the talent in the world. People see it on tape. His last 3 years, him starting at Notre Dame, he's been seen as one of the best corners in college football the last couple of years. But when you have two major hip injuries in the same area, that's going to cause some concerns. Is this guy able to play? It's caused other people to fall in the draft. Most recently, with another cornerback, Christian Gonzalez, a couple of years ago. He was kind of seen as a top 10 talent in the draft, and he had some injury concerns and had several injury reports, and he kind of ended up falling down boards, and he fell to the New England Patriots at 17, and now he's one of the best corners in the league and best young corners in the league. That could be the same for Benjamin Morrison, especially at cornerback. It's really a scary issue with how much hip twisting and having to flip your hips around to be able to guard different wide receivers in different zones. Having a hip injury could cause major concerns for a lot of teams for a corner to have that and it to be a repeated thing that's happened over the last couple of years. So that's something that really could raise a red flag and cause him to drop down some boards. But if he comes in and he's able to show his medicals and everything's fine and he looks great and he's going to be ready to go by his season next year, then a lot of teams could end up taking him in the first round in that area, and he could end up rising back up some boards because he has that natural talent that everybody's seen the last couple of years. They're just concerned about his medicals and a lot of the teams being able to see that he is healthy. He might start to creep back in more and more and more up the first round, maybe into that teens area. I think he's mostly in the mid 20s right now, but if he has bad medicals, he could end up falling into the second round. And when one team starts to pass on him, another team's going to be like, well, those medicals really are a concern to them. Should they be to us? And he just keeps falling down boards as it goes into the draft. Moving on, number three. I have two different guys. Is the Texas wide receivers I think are gonna have a big impact here. Matthew Golden, especially, is kind of being seen as a first round pick and could potentially be the number one receiver off the board or number two behind Tate McMillan. But same with Isaiah Bond. Isaiah Bond was kind of seen as a first round talent, but then he had an ankle injury and he wasn't really the same after the ankle injury. And that kind of led to Matthew Golden being able to get more reps and shine in that Texas offense throughout the year. So it's led to them both kind of being very highly draft picks. Golden's probably in that first round, early second range. Isaiah Bond's probably in that mid second range right now, based on where he would go. But the reason both of them could blow up the combine is for several different reasons, but kind of similar as well. Both of them have incredible speed. These two could possibly be the two fastest receivers at the combine, and they could get close to being able to try to set the record that Xavier Worthy set last year. But these guys really have incredible speed, and they're going to be able to show it in the 40-yard dash because that's pretty much the main show of the NFL Combine is being able to how fast you run in that straight round at the 40-yard dash. And they could end up being the best in drills with their footworks and their hands. Now, Isaiah Bond does have a lot more to prove than Matthew Golden because with that ankle injury and he was able to miss part of the time, he didn't really seem the same after the ankle injury. He started to kind of have a lot of drops. His hands were more inconsistent. So, not along with his speed, but him in these drills with his ball catching, is if he's able to go out and catch every single ball and run some crisp routes out there in the field work drills in that time of the area on Saturday when the receivers go, he could end up raising his stock back up maybe into that early second round. I still don't think no matter what he does, unless he goes out and breaks the record and he's able to show, just some crazy catches, then maybe he could sneak into the first round. But he would have to have probably the best performance of the combine in a while over all the receivers there. But he could definitely raise his stock back up and prove that he's back from injury and he's able to fight over the ankle. And it was just him kind of dealing with injury, trying to fight through it to get Texas to the championship. That's kind of something that he could end up proving to a lot of these teams to kind of raise his stock back up to that early second round area. Number four, people that are going to be affected at the combine. I have, in general, a lot of the top offensive linemen in this class. The real question is, how are these offensive linemen going to measure? The reason is, a lot of these linemen, it's a weird offensive line class in this draft because a lot of them are seen as tackles that could potentially play guard. And that's a lot of the question with a lot of these guys. Are they guards? Are they tackles? Because of their height and their length. And the most questionable part is their arm length. How are these guys going to come in and measure with their arm length? A lot of these NFL teams feel weird about their measurables. If a guy does not fit their certain measurables, then they're not going to play him at that position. So if it's pretty much law, if they do not have this amount of arm length, we are not going to pick him to play tackle. And they could end up seeing them more as a guard after this week at the combine based on their measurables. And that could cause a couple of them to slide down in the first round. A lot of them are seen as kind of top 10 picks because we're looking at them as tackles right now in this draft. And if a team sees them more as a guard, it's just simple that guard is not as valuable as tackle. NFL teams and everyone values tackles a lot more than guards. And if they're going to see you as a guard, they're not going to take you as early. They're not going to take you with the number four overall pick to the Patriots if they end up doing that if they don't see you as a left tackle. There's no possible way. They may not even take you in the top 10 if they don't see you as a tackle. It's very rare, unless it's a generational guard, that a guard gets taken in the top 10. Somebody like a Quentin Nelson is the most memorable in 2018 when the Colts took him, I think, at five, if I remember correctly. So it's really going to be interesting to see their arm length and how their arm lengths are going to be measured to see if NFL teams are going to see a lot of these guys more as guards or tackles. I think several of them could end up playing both. Kelvin Banks, I do think, in my opinion, is more of just a straight tackle. If you're going to play him, I don't think he necessarily belongs at guard. Maybe he plays guard for a year. Will Campbell, I think, doesn't play like a guard, so he needs to be a tackle. And Armand Membu and Tyler Booker, I think, are just more of guards. Tyler Booker is a straight guard, but no tackle experience. And Armand Membu, I think, needs to be a guard. He's going to be better, but could be somebody that could bump out the tackle every once in a while. So it's really going to depend on how teams see them, what their measurables, if depending on how they're going to fluctuate up teams' boards if they see him more as a guard or a tackle. And lastly, the number five person that I think is going to be affected by the combine is James Pierce. Now, this one's very interesting because a lot of the media has him going very high, but the one guy, Daniel Jeremiah, who has a lot of inside sources to the NFL, to several GMs and a lot of teams, who's been a past scout for the Ravens for many years, he has James Pierce at the last pick of the first round and sees him as someone that could potentially fall out of the second round. And when Daniel Jeremiah has someone that's fallen, it definitely reflects his sources of something that he knows based on his sources that he has and his kind of relationship he has with these GMs that a lot of teams may not be liking James Pierce if he's fallen down in Daniel Jeremiah's mock drafts. And there's been a lot of reports that he has a lot of character issues, that he has a lot of anger issues type stuff. And he's been kind of falling down over the past couple weeks. This is a guy last year that when people were doing way too early mock drafts for this draft, that he was seen as a potential person that could be the number one overall pick in this class, but he didn't really have the production this year and he kind of fell off and he was a little bit disappointing. He only had about 7 sacks compared to the year before where he had like 13, 14 sacks. So he didn't really have that repeat of where he was. So he's kind of started to fall down boards and he's kind of in that middle of the first round area where he is really going to be affected is in his team interviews. Whenever he goes in interviews with these teams and he needs to have a good interview, he needs to be passionate and he can't really show those character issues. That's really what's going to affect him, how teams see him in these interviews. If they see him as somebody that has a lot of character issues, he's going to fall down some boards. This happened with Micah Parsons a couple years ago. Micah Parsons kind of had this rumor of he might have some character concerns, but he has all the talent in the world. And he ended up falling on the board and went to Dallas in number 11. And he ended up being pretty much the best player in the class. And he's one of the most dominant edge rushers. And he pretty much took the NFL league by storm. And that's kind of the similar situation that we're having here. James Pierce is a freak athlete. He has all the talent in the world. He's shown the production in college, even though he had a disappointing season this last year. And he could go out at the combine and dominate all these drills as a freak athlete that he is and his speed that he has, because he's more of a speed and finesse type rusher. He's not really a power guy. And he kind of doesn't do a whole lot against the run, but he's more of that pure pass rusher type build. So in these drills, he's definitely going to show out. But it's really his character concerns and how he's going to do in these team interviews with a lot of the teams. Somebody like the Bengals that may be trying to get a combination of Trey Henderson, somebody like the Cardinals, or even somebody like the Panthers that could end up seeing him go all the way up that high at number 8 or somebody like that to try to get talent on that defense. Or even the 49ers at number 11. It really depends on all that, how he is going to be with those teams. Are they going to see him as a character concern, a character issue? Is he going to put in the hard work? Is he going to be an issue in that locker room? Because then he's going to start falling on the boards, and he may even fall out of the first round, according to what Daniel Jeremiah has had in his mocks. So it's really going to be a big weekend for him to try to go out and impress these teams and show that he has high character, and then he's going to be a good part of a lot of these football teams. But these were the top 5 guys and top 5 areas that I think are going to be affected by the NFL Combine coming up this week. I'm going to have a lot more Combine stuff coming out this week, especially with how people are performing later in the week. So please make sure to comment down below anything you agreed or disagreed with that I talked about in here. Please make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel for future NFL content that I'm going to be putting out, especially this week with the NFL Combine and free agency and NFL draft stuff. And thanks for watching.
Yeah, feel like John Moran. Need a triple double. Told him check the stats. Yeah, I got a couple. I don't drop the ball. Now I never fumble. I'm the MVP. Now I feel like Russell. Feel like John Moran.